This is episode number 27 of Hitting for the Cycle. I'm Ryan Touhey. That's Ben Kruse. Another week of this very long Major League Baseball season is basically in the books. And Ben, we got a lot to discuss today.
Yep, lots to discuss. This is pretty much like the second week of the season, and there's already just a lot of stuff, like another season, stuff already on top of others. And we'll talk about it, but stuff between pitching, stuff between injuries, we'll have it all for it.
Yeah, we got a lot of injury news specifically to discuss in this episode. But before we do, we just want to remind everybody to follow Hitting for the Cycle on Facebook, X, and Instagram at HFTC ETB. Follow the Empty the Bench podcast network at ETB Network. Follow our YouTube channel at youtube.com/ETB Network. And finally, listen to us on wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, and this show is also presented by Playback. In terms of watching sports, it's more fun with others, but we spend time watching alone. Playback is a space, and it's a community of social interactions where we can watch games specifically and deliver our own play-by-play analysis, and we can invite viewers for a Q&A session. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience from playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB Network to find more about our stream schedule.
All right, so let's get into it. So we're going to start things off with a very big story that's been going on around baseball over the past week, basically. And it seems that Major League Baseball pitchers nowadays are just dropping down like flies. There's been a big increase in pitcher injuries recently. It's basically an epidemic at this point. There's an increase in UCL injuries, flexor strains, and Tommy John surgeries. It's really absurd. And like I said, we're only in the second week of the Major League Baseball season, and these guys already have season-ending injuries. Just to name a few, Jonathan Loáisiga of the New York Yankees, Shane Bieber of the Cleveland Guardians, Spencer Strider of the Atlanta Braves. All of them have UCL injuries. Yuri Perez of the Miami Marlins, he's getting Tommy John surgery. I don't know if he already got it or not, but he had to go under the knife. Josiah Gray of the Washington Nationals, he also has a flexor strain as well. And finally, Framber Valdez of the Houston Astros, he has elbow inflammation, so he's going to be missing some time as well. Again, this is only 2 weeks into the baseball season, and these guys are already going down with significant injuries. And, there's been a lot of talk around Major League Baseball. The Major League Baseball Players Association actually released a statement shortly after some of these injuries were happening, basically blaming the pitch clock and Rob Manfred for the rules that were implemented. Obviously, the pitch clock, between pitches, Major League pitchers only have 15 seconds between pitches to throw the next one. And when runners are on base now, that time has been decreased from 20 seconds to 18 seconds. So, the pitch clock is being scrutinized a little bit here. But for me, this isn't that big of a surprise. I mean, Major League Baseball pitchers nowadays throw anywhere from 95 to 100 miles an hour. Baseball pitchers are taught, velocity, spin rate, all this stuff, to achieve the maximum potential on their pitches. And unfortunately, pitching is not necessarily a natural motion for anybody's arm. Obviously, it takes practice and it takes a lot of time and determination to master that craft. And, when you're teaching these young guys, throw, as hard as you possibly can, they basically Major League Baseball teams more and more nowadays are, stressing, we want as much strikeouts as we possibly can. We don't want the ball put in play as much. We want, with all the technology and everything, there should be no reason why these guys, can't reach their full potential of, being a pitcher. And while that sounds great and all, at the same time, you're putting so much stress on these young guys' arms. And also, I forget who said this necessarily, but if I'm not mistaken, the ulnar collateral ligament, which is the main part of the pitching arm that takes the most abuse during pitching, is not fully developed in somebody's body until I think they were like 25 or 26 years old. And this is not just in Major League Baseball. This is also going on in the minor leagues. This is also going on even in high school. More and more, young people nowadays, young pitchers, are being taught to throw the ball, like 95 and up. It's not healthy at all, and it's really hurting the sport. I mean, growing up, in the 2000s, us two, Dr. James Andrews, he's the one who said that. And James Andrews is one of the most renowned surgeons in the sports world. He's done hundreds of surgeries on some of the best well-known athletes, including guys like Roger Clemens and John Smoltz, just to name a few. But yeah, I mean, this is not good at all. And getting back to what I was saying, in the 2000s, the decade that, we were growing up, there weren't too many, Tommy John surgeries. Obviously you had a few here or there, but, for the most part, guys threw like 90 to 95 at maximum on their fastball. But, guys were crafty and they didn't rely solely on the heat. They found ways to get guys out, mostly by inducing, ground balls or fly balls. And, there was nothing wrong with that. There's a reason why you have 8 fielders around you. And, nowadays, that art, or I still think it's an art to be able to get guys out without heavily relying on the strikeouts. But that art is, drastically gone down. And this is not good for baseball at all. And it really stinks. And, I understand that, guys have the ability to throw harder than ever before, but it's not good. I definitely think that guys really need to tone it down a notch and, worry about their health and their well-being. And I'm kind of rambling on a little bit here, but I'll let you take over a little bit here. Ben, what do you think?
Yeah, no, you pretty much said a lot of what I was going to say. It's very unfortunate in terms of how early this season's been, and we're seeing a lot of this. Corbin Burns, actually, for the Orioles, was commenting about this stuff, and I think he pretty much said kind of something along the lines of just the pitch clock and stuff obviously is a massive impact in terms of guys, getting themselves to their max ability in a shortened amount of time in between pitches, right? You catch the ball and you get back to the mound. You don't really have as much time, kind of like before, of just kind of pacing a little bit, kind of in terms of your own tempo. Obviously, the game obviously is trying to get a lot faster, right? But there's going to be, unfortunately, some consequences with this. And I think one of these consequences is that you're seeing this stuff. And I think, unfortunately, we're not at the end by any means of this stuff, unfortunately, the way, the things are kind of trajectory, because a lot of guys are throwing within 94 to 96 miles an hour on their fastball. And it's really hard for a lot of these pitchers to rely essentially on other pitches specifically. It's really just the fastball, that they use to their advantage. So I think, you look at a lot of these guys, Shane Bieber, Sandy Alcantara, Nick Pivetta, all these guys specifically have a multiple pitching arsenal. And essentially when you have that specific, there's so much torque in terms on your elbow, your arm, right? So it fucks up a lot, right? And I think when you look at UCL and flexor and Tommy John, it's not just in one part of your overall area. It's in a lot of places specifically. So it's really hard. Obviously Garrett Cole, right? Garrett Cole, at the time, Ryan, I felt like, oh, damn, this sucks. It's only a couple pitchers. And now it's it's getting bad. So there has to be probably something that MLB and the association are probably talking about. And they can't just look at this and be like, it's a standard thing. It's a lot more than in past years. And it's only the second to third week of the season. So it's definitely a glamour thing to look at. And, hopefully these guys come back healthy and they do what they can to, treat their bodies and stuff. But it's really, really tough. It really is.
Yeah, and when discussing the issue, Garrett Cole actually came out with a statement. He said the standard of performance is higher, and the league is demanding that you throw your best pitch every time because the hitters are better. Some hitters I think are definitely better, but I also think there are some hitters that are worse, to be honest with you. So I don't necessarily buy that to the fullest. When the league or I think the league is kidding themselves. I guess is a better way of describing it when they say that the hitters are better. Because when I watch some of these guys, some of them are not better. But regardless, the strike zone. Cole also went on to say the strike zone is smaller. The balls are different, and the bats are different, and we've evolved into a higher performance product, which is good. But as we've evolved over the last 10 years, we've had 2 shortened ramp-up seasons because of the COVID-19 season and the labor lockout. And they've had a pitch clock, obviously. Guys have had to adjust to other different rules inside the game, and they go about their business. And he thinks it's irresponsible for either side to say any one of those things definitely has no impact on players' elbows or shoulders, which I definitely agree with. I mean, Cole would know better than almost anybody. I mean, the guy has been a professional pitcher for over a decade now. He's a proven veteran. And, he's currently on the injured list right now. Right now, it doesn't seem like he needs Tommy John surgery or any significant surgery. But, down the road, I wouldn't be surprised if this problem that he's dealing with right now flares up again. And Tony Clark, obviously the head of the Players Association, said, despite unanimous player opposition and significant concerns regarding health and safety, the commissioner's office reduced the length of the pitch clock last December, just 1 season removed from imposing the most significant rule change in decades. And since then, our concerns about the health impacts of reduced recovery time have only intensified. The league's unwillingness thus far to acknowledge or study the effects of these profound changes is an unprecedented threat to our game and its most valuable asset, the players. And, I agree to an extent that the pitch clock is definitely to blame for this problem. I mean, like I said, 15 seconds is not necessarily a lot of time. And like you said, they're trying to speed the game up. And, I'm all for, trying to speed the game up in some way, shape, or form. But, 15 seconds is not necessarily a long time, like I mentioned. And you're decreasing the amount of time to throw pitches with men on base by 2 full seconds. And I was thinking to myself when that news first broke over the offseason, I was thinking to myself, you just started this pitch clock for 1 year. You're already changing the time. And, 2 seconds, going from 20 seconds to 18 seconds, I think it does make a big difference.
It does.
It makes a pretty big difference. So, I think that was a little absurd when I heard that. That was a little bit much. And yeah, like I said, it just goes back to the lack of time pitchers have now between pitches to recuperate. And, the fact that they're just throwing so damn hard. It's not a healthy combination. To me, this is not rocket science. I'm not a scientist by any stretch of the imagination. I never will be. But, this is not hard for me to, see why this is happening. I think it's just a mix of, the lack of time these pitchers have between pitches and the fact that they're just throwing so freaking hard. This is not a healthy combination.
Yep.
Either you increase the amount of time between pitches, maybe go from like 15 to 20 or 25 or something like that. I know that's still, adding another 10 seconds or 15 seconds or something like that. But, I think that was typically the amount of time it took pitchers to throw between pitches in the old days before the pitch clock, for the most part, that is.
Yep.
So, just somewhere around that general area, but make it a little shorter, because sometimes pitchers in the old days would take forever because they were constantly throwing the ball over to first base, or they were calling timeouts to try and get on the same page as their catcher. So, obviously keep the other rules that you have about, stepping off the mound or throwing the ball over to first base. The average game actually increased from the late 1990s to 2021 and 2022. And the pitching injuries skyrocketed from a combined 11,668 IL days. Obviously, that's a combination of all pitchers in Major League Baseball from 1995 to 1999 to 31,558 days in 2023. And, like I said, when you're teaching these guys to throw so hard and instructed to strike every hitter out, then the game in length is going to increase because they're going to be throwing more pitches. So hence you're making these guys throw more pitches, whereas in the old days, the era that we grew up in the late 90s, early late 90s throughout the 2000s. There weren't as many strikeouts. Guys put the ball in play more, obviously, but you know what? Fielders were more active, and it still made for a great time and made for a good quality baseball. And also the amount of strikeouts nowadays, it's kind of infuriating how little, most guys, put the ball in play. I mean, in the old days, they were instructed, it was basically common sense. Don't strike out because that does nothing for you. Put the ball in play. Joey Gallo would never make it in the 2000s, I'll say that. But it's absurd. I mean, it's kind of frustrating as a baseball fan to see, as much as I love baseball, it's just to see what it's become nowadays is pretty frustrating for me because I love this sport more than any other sport. I watch it more than any other sport. And yeah, I mean, I can't say I'm surprised at this, and it's hurting the game. So yeah, that's basically where I stand on this whole thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, like you mentioned, there's going to be so much, stuff that happens throughout the year, and we're gonna have to just monitor it. Or MLB is probably gonna do like a study and do research by the end of this year and see in terms of comparing it to other seasons, how much specifically this overall season is impacted with guys getting hurt. But pitchers specifically, I mean, and we'll talk about some position players that also got hurt, hence already got on my team. So yeah, it sucks. It really, really sucks. I mean, I hate injuries. I really hate injuries to star players because it really takes away the sport as a whole in terms of it's not over the watching, but just the fun of it. But regardless of who it is, I hate to see people go down and UCL injuries, flexor strains, Tommy John. When you ever hear any of those three words, Ryan, never good.
They're career altering injuries. You're not the same player anymore. I mean, sure, it doesn't affect. Sure, you can come back from it. Obviously, I mean, we've seen guys come back from Tommy John surgeries and continue where they left off, basically. But it takes a toll on the body. And when I'm seeing guys, like in high school, when I'm hearing stories about 17, 16, 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds getting Tommy John surgery, I'm just thinking to myself, way too young. It's not healthy at all. And yeah, that's
why my little league in my town, I mean, they probably emphasize it in many towns to have pitchers not throw curveballs at a very young age. In my town specifically, said do not throw curveballs in the league. And I was actually a pitcher. So specifically, I didn't pitch a lot in Little League, but in like the Junior Babe and Babe Ruth, I got actually recruited in my town to a travel baseball league to be a pitcher. And so I was a pretty decent pitcher back in the day. I mean, I wasn't great. I wasn't awful. But when my command was good specifically, I obviously had an off-speed pitch, but I used it wisely. And specifically, I used a lot specifically in terms of my body, taking care of my body. And I obviously don't know how these pitchers, in terms of taking their body, I mean, that's probably a lot better than mine, right? But, you kind of look at it and just like, even if you take care of your body specifically, like you mentioned, it takes a toll on your body. And when you have one specific major thing happen, you just never know, right? You might come back and it's like, oh, you feel good. And then it's just like you have another setback. Or you already have a setback and you come back and it's like, all right, you could pitch another like couple months and then it's that. So doctors and MLB physicians and stuff, they have to take a look at some of these type of guys and just see specifically who can come back from this fully, and then who could come back from this and not be as 100%, and then who could just come back and just legitimately not be the same guy, right? Because there's just so many repercussions on all these guys. So it's a lot that we talked about there, Ryan, but it's definitely something that needs to be emphasized in today's game for sure.
Yeah, and this is the last point that I'll make regarding this topic. This is from Cedar Sinai Curlin of Joby Institute or Job Institute. I'm not exactly how you pronounce it, but basically he said by 2012, a record 69 major league pitchers had Tommy John surgery in a single year. Today, MLB players numbering in the hundreds have undergone Tommy John surgery. That's obviously going for both Major League Baseball and minor league baseball, I'm assuming. And it's estimated that more than 2,200 plus surgeries have been performed across all levels of baseball, and including high school, college, and the minors. Like I said, baseball is just killing their pitchers with this. And like you said, the caliber of these pitchers, they're big names. Nobody's immune. And this is a major problem, and Major League Baseball needs to do a better job of taking care of their pitchers. Teams need to do a better job of taking care of their pitchers, and pitchers need to do a better job of taking care of themselves.
Right. Yeah, I mean, look at the Marlins rotation, Ryan. I mean, this week, obviously, I think like four or five of the guys in the Marlins rotation. You look at Alcantara, Perez, Braxton Garrett, like all the guys are hurt.
That's why they stink. They have no pitching.
Yeah, I mean, kidding all jokes aside, it's like it's ridiculous. Of like, it's not just for like maybe a couple of guys specifically, but it's affecting like rotations here and there. It's just like you can't bank on a lot of the guys from AAA to just come up and be like, all right, helping the team out. Of course, you're going to have to need it. Injuries are going to happen, but it's taken more of a toll, I think, this year, Ryan, than I feel like in the last several years. And like that's saying a lot because there was just so much back in the day too. So something needs to change.
Yeah, I mean, I just look back at the 2000s, and it really, looking back on it, it really makes me appreciate, guys, pitchers who were durable during the 2000s. My favorite player, actually, as a Yankee fan, my favorite pitcher growing up was actually Mike Mussina, and he rarely ever spent any time on at the time known as the disabled list or the injured list. But he never had complete overpowering stuff. But he got creative, and he was able to, get guys out with all of his pitches. And his fastball was typically clocked around 90 to 92 miles an hour. But he had a filthy knuckle curveball. He had a good changeup. So he had plenty of ways to get you out. And those are the pitchers that I really, really miss. The guys who you knew were going to take the ball every day.
He's Sabathia. He learned himself in the second half of his career that you could be a command pitcher and find still ways to get out. You don't have to tax your arm. Right, as long as you can command the zone, understand specifically the pitch sequence, you can still be an effective pitcher, even if you don't need to throw hard. And I think specifically that's another thing with these pitchers that they got to realize is, obviously you need to have some velocity in today's game. It obviously has to happen because the hitting's so much better, right, with a lot of these teams. So you feel like pitchers specifically need to overpower them to get them out. And so the best way to do it is throw fastballs and to throw in the mid-90s and stuff, which – yes, you need to have, but at the same time, it's the matter of, are you overdoing, right? Because now we're seeing specifically all these types of injuries, and it's just like you mentioned, are they taking in their body enough? 2, are they throwing too hard, right, consistently? And 3, can they specifically kind of change things up a little bit throughout the season where they're not putting so much on their bodies because, you're not going to make it out of the season, Ryan, if you're just essentially doing the same process every single time. It's just not going to happen, especially for guys that are power pitchers.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's a problem. And, it's a problem that Major League Baseball and its players really need to do a better job of solving. Otherwise, I don't see this stopping anytime soon. And, when it comes to the pitchers specifically, I really think they need to listen to their body more when they're on the mound. And if they're getting exhausted or fatigued more easily during a game because of how hard they're throwing, take it down a notch and get creative a little bit here. Don't be too afraid to try and get guys out by getting them to ground out or pop out or fly out. Like I said, you got 8 fielders behind you, or one in front of you and 7 behind you. But it's a problem. And some of these guys, who I mentioned have had a ton of injury history, mostly Jonathan Loaiza. This guy can't stay healthy to save his life. And
that sucks. And a lot of these guys too, Ron, I was just thinking when you were talking, are either in walk years or in potentially trade discussions. Shane Bieber, for instance, right? He was potentially going to be in trade discussions last year, and now he's going to be a free agent this year. There's going to be so many teams now when you look at specifically, some top arms. I mean, obviously Jesus Luzardo, probably the Marlins are probably going to move on from him. You just hopefully, a guy like him, he's young specifically, that he doesn't have anything like this, right? So it's not just the pitcher specifically, just them itself. It's just a matter of the timing. Some are specifically on contract years. Some specifically are in trade discussions. So they have to be even more careful to be a zero because teams are going to be hesitant to pay a guy specifically that is just coming off of a specific thing like this.
Yep.
So
Yep. Like I said, it's a problem. And yeah. So that's that. We spent a lot of time talking about that. And unfortunately, hopefully, moving forward, there are no more or a lot less significant pitching injuries around the league. But, with the way things are, I wouldn't be surprised if more things occur. So that's that. Now we're going to move on to our next topic and some pretty big news. Yesterday, Major League Baseball's number one prospect, Jackson Holliday, he made his Major League debut, just 20 years old, made his debut against your Boston Red Sox at Fenway Park last night. As of the day of this recording, obviously today is Thursday, April 11th, but he made his debut yesterday, Wednesday, April 10th. And the Orioles won 7-5. Holliday specifically didn't do anything too crazy. He did drive in his first run, though. He's got his first RBI. And, there's a lot of expectations on this kid. And like I said, just 20 years old. I remember his father. I remember watching Matt Holliday, obviously. It wasn't too long ago that Matt was still playing in the major leagues. And now, just a few years later, here's his son already taking on Major League Baseball. And, there's a lot of expectations for this kid. He's got a beautiful swing. I've seen some highlights of him. He's got some good pop in that bat. He's a very good fielder. There are a lot of expectations for him. And I definitely think, though, when it comes to, highly touted prospects such as Jackson Holliday, I think you should always, tone down the hype just a little bit and just let these guys be who they are and just, let them get a feel for the league and whatnot. I see all these video packages all the time of, showcasing how great these guys are. And, it's cool to promote these players. But, personally for me, I think you should just all right. Take it down a little bit here. He hasn't even come to the major leagues yet. Yeah. Sometimes, these guys don't always pan out well in the major leagues. But obviously, me personally, I think Holliday's got a lot of potential. I think he's going to be a really solid player for years to come. And like I said, he was born in 2000, and he's 20 years old. He was born in 2003. I remember being in first grade in 2003.
Crazy.
It's wild. He's married too, by the way, at only 20 years old. Which is something you don't really see that anymore. You really don't see that. But But yeah, Jackson Holliday made his major league debut yesterday. Based on what you saw, if you watched the game last night, and based on what you've seen and heard, does anything stand out about Holliday to you?
Yeah, obviously for this kid, talk about a dream come true to get your name called up, to be at your first game played at Fenway Park. Specifically, Ron, that, at least to me, just when you hear that, that just at least gives me chills. No matter if you're a Red Sox or not, just going into one of the most iconic ballparks that will ever go down, specifically, that's obviously what biased me, but still, going through that whole kind of the history and stuff like that and getting the chance to play your first game at Fenway, it means a lot for probably a kid like him. And I agree with you. He is going to be he's going to be a great player. Of course, he's going to give our teams hell, hopefully probably down the road. So that ain't going to be fun between him and Gunnar Henderson, Adley Rutschman. This is what Oriole fans have been dreaming and clamoring for after essentially being purgatory for many, many years. And they finally get essentially what they were rewarded for a long, long time of getting these first-round picks. And I look at just overall the Red Sox pitching trying to face that lineup yesterday, Ryan, and it's going to be hell for a long, long time. Essentially, there's just no easy parts of their lineup anymore like they once were, specifically of all right, you can pitch around. Guys like Colton Cowser, Cedric Mullins, Ryan Mountcastle. You put in Jackson Holliday in the 9-0 yesterday, and then you have number one, Gunnar Henderson. That's and you have Adley Rutschmacher. It's just it's ridiculous. They essentially are our future specifically. And the thing is, Ryan, too, is they're not even done yet. Their AAA team put up 26 runs, I think, last week or something like that. And I'm just I'm just like, this is ridiculous. So Kyle Stowers is obviously down there. He's been going crazy. So, but yeah, all things aside, Jackson Holliday, congrats to him. 20 years old. I mean, like you said, I didn't think he was married, but good for him. But he's getting his whole entire wish right now, and the fact that it came true yesterday. Now obviously 0 for 3. He botched the ball on Tyler O'Neill. So of course, people now are like, oh, bust. No. Just he's 20 years old. I mean, the fact that he's up in the big leagues right now is all crazy aside, right? So I mean, he of course has a long career ahead of him. And talking about Matt Holliday, and I was actually, when you're talking about that, Craig Kimbrell, of course, is now the Orioles closer. And so when Kimbrell was on the Red Sox, he gave up a home run at Fenway to Matt Holliday as a Yankee.
I do remember
that. Craig Kimbrell was pitching last night to Matt Holliday's son. When Matt Holliday's son, Jackson, right behind him in the game last night. You talk about baseball, right? And that's why this is the best sport.
Yep.
So that's just some things about him. Like you said, he's a great swing. I just hope that he doesn't do much against the Red Sox down the road. I mean, I'd enjoy it specifically. He does other damage against other teams with him. But it's going to be great to see him play. It really is. I'm excited to see in terms of everything. And, that Orioles team, they're going to be fun to watch for sure.
Yep. So family history gets passed down from one generation to another, father and son, playing in Major League Baseball within the course of just, I think, 6 years of each other. I mean, I think Matt Holliday retired after the 2018 season, and then just 6 years later, his son is in the major leagues. So it's pretty crazy to see how that all worked out. And speaking of family in baseball, I just want to quickly touch on the fact that Bo and Josh Naylor of the Cleveland Guardians hit back-to-back home runs last night on National Siblings Day. So the Naylor brothers go back-to-back. The Guardians win in dramatic fashion on a walk-off single by none other than Bo Naylor himself. And the Guardians completed a comeback against the White Sox last night. And like you had mentioned earlier, how could you not be romantic about baseball? It runs in family's blood. And that was a pretty cool moment as well. So congratulations to Jackson Holliday, Matt Holliday, the rest of the Holliday family, and the rest of the Orioles organization. Please don't kill my Yankees just yet.
Yeah, like you mentioned, I think he's going to be great. But like you said, just tone the hype down. There's a lot of prospects that come off. Especially for a guy like him. I mean, there's not many guys as a number one prospect that's at 20 years old, they're getting called up to the big leagues. It just doesn't happen. Typically they kind of wait until mid 20s or whatever. Mm-hmm. But they're really speaking highly of this kid. And I don't know if you saw this, Ryan, too. Tony Kemp from the Orioles, second baseman, he got DFA'd obviously for the transaction call up. And Kemp specifically went to Twitter or X yesterday, and he pretty much said, kind of the overall story of dreaming for him as a kid, he has a great swing. He was kind of giving props of his call up, which was really, really cool because many people that kind of get DFA'd or, get released, they're obviously upset, but Ken kind of took the other side of it. And it's just I'm rooting for this kid. I'm pulling for him. And I think that's really cool too, is they kind of see a lot of these guys down, in the farm system and stuff like that. And just kind of, giving them support. And I think that's really, really cool to see. So that was obviously something cool that I really thought, and it's really classy, as well too. So we'll see in terms of where Kemp goes. I think that for him, I saw him play at the game on Tuesday. He had a really, really good catch, of course, against us. But we'll see in terms of where he goes. But I just want to kind of quickly make that case of just really cool to see just the support for a kid that is going to be really, really good for a long, long time. So.
Yeah, and Holliday's the youngest call-up to the majors since Bryce Harper came up at 19 years old in 2012. And we all remember the hype surrounding Bryce Harper when he first came up. It's very rare that guys get called up at 19 and 20 years old. But Harper obviously was an exception at 19. Juan Soto also came up when he was 19 years old as well. We both know how Harper and Soto have panned out in their careers. So who knows? Maybe Holliday will be following suit, and he has magical career ahead of him. But there's a lot to look forward to for Holliday, and there's a lot to look forward to for the Orioles. And watch out for them. They're going to make a lot of noise. And like you said, even their AAA team is crazy to watch. The Norfolk Tides scoring like 26 runs like a couple of days ago. So yeah, the Orioles have some talented ball players, and he's not even fully developed yet. Holliday's got a lot of talent that he still has yet to unlock. And when he unlocks it, it's probably going to be a nightmare for opposing teams. So watch out, Major League Baseball. So now we'll move on. I'm sure you have an interesting take on this. So the Red Sox have finalized an 8-year, $50 million contract extension with their youngest player, rookie Ceddane. How do you pronounce his name?
Ceddane Rafaela.
Ceddane Rafaela. 8 years, $50 million. And this is pretty interesting because Rafaela, he's only played in about 39 games, if I'm not mistaken, with the Red Sox.
Something like that. Yep.
Something like that. He hasn't done much, obviously, at the major league level just yet. But I mean, this goes to show that the Red Sox think very highly of this kid, and I think they are looking to lock up the another cornerstone piece for their future after not being able to lock up guys like Mookie Betts long term. I think they are very determined to make sure that something like that doesn't happen again, and they're making sure that they have these guys in their grips for years to come. So I think that's basically why they've done this. I don't know anything about Rafaela. I don't know how much of him you've seen specifically or what you think about him. But as a Red Sox fan, what do you think about this move?
Love it. I think that, he has a lot of raw tools right now. But and I'm surprised specifically that he was the one extended first ever Casas. But that's another story for another day. But I like it. I like it a lot. He's very versatile. The Red Sox take a lot and their versatility. And, they lock up, obviously, Brian Bayo first to a 6-7 year thing. And Ryan, this is obviously now making me think right now of the Atlanta Braves. The Red Sox, essentially, their front office right now is looking at the Atlanta Braves in terms of locking young guys up for the long term and hopefully being able to load up this team. Because you now see in terms of what the Braves are doing right now, right? They have a lot of young talent, but they also have some talent that they have to go elsewhere. I think with the Red Sox, Rafael, I think, is one of their pieces. I think Tristan Casas is going to be next. But right now, as Craig Breslow said yesterday, there's no more extension talks for any guys as of right now. But they're going to get something done with Casas. I think that this is a very welcoming thing for the Red Sox and for myself as a fan because for many seasons, it was very frustrating, in terms of lowballing guys. And, obviously, you have the fans about Rafael is just like, well, people are, of course, going to, bitch them on that about how much the money is going to be and stuff like that. These two guys specifically had to be here long term. And, I think that with Rafael, like you mentioned, he hasn't played much just in the big leagues, but, he has very good defense in the outfield, which the Red Sox have needed. He could play center field. He could play shortstop. He could play second base. Those are pretty much the three positions. I think outfield, he's very elite. I think in the infield, he's solid, right? So, I mean, people obviously are giving the young Mookie Betts thing. I'm not going that far, but he has a lot of comps in terms of some guys that he could be. And, I think that his offense will get there. I think that he's a very, very good swing. He can hit to all fields. He gets to obviously opposite field. So I think I like this a lot. And Sam Kennedy was saying yesterday on the pregame show on the Red Sox that they want to start kind of locking some guys, young guys specifically to, long term, if they want to be here, like Ceddane was saying yesterday. So I think all parties aside, I think this is a very good deal. 8 years, $50 million, youngest player specifically. And I think many Red Sox fans, including myself, were very pleased about this because it's all about excitement. And I think the Red Sox need some of this. And a player like Rafael, I think, brings this. So, Brian, you'll know this name pretty well, I think, for the next couple of years, as a Yankee fan on the other side, because I think that he's going to essentially, his offense is going to take that next step. I have belief in that. I think compared to other guys like Willie or Abreu, I don't know about guys like Yoshida, right? But Rafael, I think his defense already has great tools. His offense, I think, will come. And it's going to be, I think this is going to be a very good thing. And he also said, too, in the 8 years, I don't know if you heard about this, but he said, I want to have a World Series in May by the end of the contract, which I think was kind of dope. So, all things aside, I think that this is going to be special with us, and I'm excited.
Yeah, well, hopefully he, like I said about Jackson Holliday, hopefully he doesn't kill my Yankees just yet. So, but yeah, the Red Sox are trying to build up the next core group of players to help lead them into the future. And we'll see how it turns out. But, even though there aren't too many expectations this year for the Red Sox, I definitely think better years are not far ahead. And I definitely think they have the talent to. It doesn't take much for them. Knowing me as a Yankee fan, it doesn't take much time for them to get back to the top. So we'll see what happens. So congratulations to Rafaela, and congratulations to the Red Sox. And we're going to stick with news regarding the Red Sox. Unfortunately, this is on a somber note.
Why not?
Trevor Story is going to undergo surgery on his shoulder for a fractured glenoid. If you don't know what that is, it's basically the shoulder socket. He fractured his shoulder socket after diving for a ground ball hit off the bat of Mike Trout in Anaheim on April 5th. And this is just another of a long list of injuries for Trevor Story. And this poor guy can't catch a break. Ever since he came to Boston, he's just spent significant time on the injured list. He only appeared in 94 games in 2022. He had injuries to his right hand and his left foot, and he only appeared in 43 games last year. He had off-season surgery, obviously, to repair a torn UCL. So, the ulnar collateral ligament nowadays just takes a beating around Major League Baseball for both pitchers and position players. And now this guy fractures his shoulder, and this is just horrible. It's just sad. And he was breaking down, understandably, in tears. The recovery time on this injury, they're saying 6 months. So there isn't much hope for him to return this season, unfortunately. And it sucks. Story's a class act, and to see this guy just go through another injury is just heartbreaking. It's absolutely heartbreaking. And, he's not the only one who's dealing with injuries, obviously. Geraldo Perdomo of the Arizona Diamondbacks, although to a lesser extent of severity, he's going to be out for at least a month with a torn meniscus. So, these guys are just two, noteworthy players around the league who are going down with injuries. And unfortunately, the injury bug is just permeating around Major League Baseball. But unfortunately for Story, this is nothing new. He just has had a hard time staying on the field. And, the Red Sox obviously were counting on him to stay healthy for the full season and to be the anchor at shortstop. And unfortunately, they're going to be weakened in that area again. So not good at all.
Yeah, I mean, of course, Ron, I hear this news at Fenway Park when I'm there for home opener. So I'm at the game, and there's a charging station at Fenway Park because there's not really many places where there's like outlets specifically. It's kind of a weird setup, but there's a charging station essentially where you can have like 20 to 30 minutes to charge your phone. So of course, I'm charging my phone, hopefully to give myself enough time to do like the pictures and stuff like that. And the Red Sox group chat I'm a part, it said Story out for the year. And I'm thinking to myself, there's no way. There's no way. And I look at it and I tell my buddy, and I just said, man, we can't catch a break. And I feel for the guy. He's had to battle with so many injuries. I was really hopeful that he was able to get a better offensive season with this team. And, his defense, I think, gets totally underplayed. I mean, his defense is very, very solid. You saw the defense kind of as a little glimmer in that West Coast trip. And then ever since that went down, it looked exactly just like last year's defense. The bad news bears of 2023 at the Red Sox is coming back. And that's the last thing I need to say. It's just another year of guys putting out of position and just the absolute clown show. Now, Alex Cora has been emphasizing to play better defense, limiting runs. And, man, I just feel for Cora in his last season, more likely than not in Boston, sadly, that he's going to have to deal with this whole entire thing again. And I think it's obviously with Story, it's not his fault that this happened. It's not. he's diving for a ball, and Mike Trout, he made a very, very good attempt on it. And,
He almost got it.
He almost got it too, yeah, which was obviously incredible. And the last couple of seasons he's been able to come back and stuff like that. But people are talking. There's people in Boston just like this contract sucks, it's awful, and stuff like that. You can't control injuries at the end of the day. You can't. I mean, yes, is it obviously a bad contract as if you look at it right now? Sure, right, because he hasn't been able to stay on the field, and he has an opt out in a couple of years. So I just don't know in terms of how I feel about that, right? That they're going to really kind of pull the plug on that because Myers going to be coming up pretty soon. Maybe they put Story to second base kind of down the road in the second half of his contract. But regardless of the fact, it sucks. It really sucks. I think that this Red Sox team is better with a Story, right? And their lineup specifically, I know that there's people that are very up and down with him. But, just hearing that news kind of, obviously he got his name introduced at the game. You can see his overall swing.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't help but just look specifically and be like, yeah, we're really have to deal with this again. And just, it sucks. It sucks the way it happened. Him breaking down in tears. Of course, he's showing he really cares about the game. And, just praying for a speedy recovery. And nothing to take away from Geraldo Perdomo. Obviously, that's very, very tough too. Torn meniscus, I've never dealt with it. That's no joke. Mm-hmm. But, he's only out for a month specifically, right? So, I mean, hopefully he'll be able to come back, even if it's a little bit of a setback. I think that Diamondbacks team is going to be fine, specifically without his overall production, right? Because, I think that Diamondbacks team is going to be good. They should be good this year. Like I said, hopefully Perdomo's okay. For injury specifically, I don't wish it on anybody by any means, right? But he should be able to come back within a couple months specifically. They should be okay without him. The Story news on the other hand with the Red Sox, the problem is they don't have anybody behind. It's almost just like one guy goes down, the whole entire thing falls apart. It's like a slide almost, where it's just like the slide's great, right? But once like a little piece kind of comes apart of it, the whole thing kind of goes down in pieces, right? So that's the status of this Red Sox team right now. It is slowly going back to last year.
Yeah, and it sucks to see. I mean, when I first saw it, I thought it was just a dislocated shoulder. That's all I was thinking at first, and I was thinking, all right, he'll probably be out for a little bit, but maybe like a month or so. But when I heard it was a fracture, I just went, "Oh my God, this poor guy." Mm-hmm. And like you mentioned, he was breaking down in tears. I can only imagine the frustration he has felt that he has to deal with another freaking injury.
Yeah, no, it's probably just like, here we go again, and that's with Chris Sale too. Chris Sale specifically, when he got moved to the Braves, they asked him about his time in Boston. He's just said, well, I enjoyed it there. It's just like, I just wish that I could bring more to the table because it's just like consistent year after year after year. He got to a point, he's just like, there's nothing I can do, as much as stuff I can come back from. And, the Story right now, it's really, really sucks. And, we'll see in terms of where things go with him. Hopefully, try again next year. That's all I'll say.
I really hate that phrase. Try again next year. See you next year. There's always next year. Next year is a long ways away.
Right.
Yeah, and Story, put in a lot of work this offseason to stay healthy, and for this to happen to him is just, it's not fair. It really is not fair at all. So, but still, I wish Story a speedy recovery, and I wish Perdomo obviously a speedy recovery as well. Perdomo, like I mentioned, is going to be out probably at least a month, but he should come back at some point this season. And for Story, most likely his season is done. So yeah, that sucks and that's sad. So now we'll move on. We're going to talk about some of the biggest surprises and some predictions for the future in this baseball season. So I'll start it off. For me, I think the biggest surprise is how well the Kansas City Royals have been playing and how poorly the Houston Astros have been playing. So right now, the Royals and the Astros are actually facing off against one another. I think tonight's the final game of a 3-game set between the two. But the Royals right now are on a 6-game winning streak. They are in second place in the American League Central, only a game behind Cleveland. And they beat the crap out of the Astros last night, 11-2, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I saw that score yesterday. Yep.
Yeah.
You love to see that, Ron.
And dating back to last year in September, remember, they swept the Astros at Minute Maid Park last September. I think they're on like a 6-game winning streak against the Astros or something like that. So, yeah, the Royals have given the Astros big problems for a while now. And, the Royals, there were a little bit of expectations going into this season for them. Obviously, they made a lot of off-season moves. They made a lot of moves to that rotation. Obviously, they brought in arms like Michael Wacha, who you guys are familiar with. Obviously, made that big contract extension to Bobby Witt Jr. Right now the Royals are sitting in second place, like I mentioned, just a game behind Cleveland. And Salvador Perez continues to rake, even though he's getting up there in age. He's still a very capable hitter. And, it's astonishing because, every year I forget about Perez. And when I see him, I'm thinking to myself, okay, he's washed up. And then he hits a home run and shuts me up. So it's just one of those things, you can't keep Salvi down. And the Royals, good for them. They're off to a good start. Like I mentioned, they had some expectations going into this season. People thought that they would get better. I don't know if they'll be able to sustain this success for an entire season, but I mean, you never know. But I think it was good for them to get off to a good start. And I did think that they are a better team this year going into this season. So right now they're on a homestand, and as of this recording, the Royals are 7-0 on this homestand.
Let's do it, Royals.
They're 7-0 on this homestand. They have displayed very well so far, and they've scored 59 runs. They've only allowed 30, so they've scored 29 more runs than they've allowed. So their pitching has been pretty good so far in the early beginning of this season. And while they are riding high, the Astros are struggling, something that they haven't been used to over the past couple of years. The Astros right now are sitting in last place in the American League West. They're 4-9 on the year. They've lost 2 in a row. Both of these games coming at the expense of the Royals. And they're 3.5 back of first place Texas. Now, obviously, it's April 11th, so you really shouldn't take the standings too seriously just yet. But, I think it's a little surprising that the Astros are struggling like this because, we're just so used to them dominating from start to finish, going wire to wire on most occasions. So, I mean, I still think the Astros will be fine. I don't expect them to struggle forever.
I hope.
But,
that'd be great.
I mean, I think
Ryan, if they would just suck this year.
I would be ecstatic. I would be ecstatic. I'd be doing cartwheels, even though I can't do a cartwheel. But the Astros numbers this season so far, their batting average is 7th. They've hit 264, which is respectable. That's not bad at all. Yeah. Their runs though, they've only scored 52 runs this year, which is 19th in baseball. So that's a little concerning. Their pitching has not been good at all.
They've been hurt. To be fair, they obviously are 4-9, but like they obviously between Valdez, between Verlander, I mean, those are 1-2 punch. They're obviously hurt, so that obviously hurts.
Yeah.
Garcia, I think, is down. He obviously gives them some innings. Urquidy's been down. So it's like, to be fair, for the people that are ready to celebrate the Astros' downfall, 1, they are inevitable, and 2, some of it hurt. As much as it pains me to say, because listen, we both don't like the Astros, but we're also realists here in baseball. And the one thing about the Astros is do not poke the bear, because that bear specifically can come out, and it could have a week specifically of they have the back factor. And so specifically, I hope it doesn't happen, but I'm prepared for that, especially when they got Verlander and Valdez back. The team specifically will start to hit. I mean, Jordan Alvarez is starting to match baseballs, which is a scary sight, I think. Again, Altuve, their lineup, I think, is fine. I think it's the matter of their pitching staff is banged up. And, they'll unfortunately be back. It's like, essentially, it's like in the storybook of, like, the guy specifically, he's just kind of creeping back in the distance. And then by the end of the story, it's just like, well, you're still here, man. You haven't left? That's the Astros.
The
So
way that I like to describe it as you're getting ready to bury your arch enemy after years of them killing you.
yeah,
You're finally putting the dirt on the casket, and then all of a sudden they open the door to the casket.
yeah, that sounds about right. Sounds about
Yeah.
right.
So yeah, that's basically the way that I describe it. But yeah, the Astros are off to a slow start, but I have no doubt in my mind that they'll figure their crap out eventually, and they'll get back to their dominant state. But yeah, I still think it's a little surprising how slow they've started out and how poorly they've played. And while I did think that the Royals were going to be good, I didn't expect them to come out of the gates, this hot. But yeah, good for them. I mean, sometimes you never know who comes out of the gates hot. Just look at the Pittsburgh Pirates, for instance. Pirates are another surprise in Major League Baseball right now. They currently are in first place in the National League Central Division. They are 9-3, so they're off to a very good start this year. So that's a little surprising to me. And they've played very well as well. So little surprises going on around baseball. The Royals and the Pirates are division leaders, and like I said, I don't really expect either of these teams to make too much noise this year, but you never know. So yeah, those are some of my surprises going on in the early parts of this season. I don't know if you had any surprises that stood out to you, or
So one of my surprises right now is Brewers are still kind of in the mix. A lot of people thought that, between Devin Williams going down, and obviously them moving on from Corbin Burns and Woodruff not even being healthy, that this team would have a really tough start to the season. But they're 8-3 right now. They've just beaten the Reds twice at their place. Freddie Peralta, Wade Miley, DJ Hall, Colin Rea, Joe Ross. I mean, they're getting some guys in their other parts of their pitching to really step up. And Christian Yelich, he might be back to his old, I wouldn't say old self, but that'll be a welcoming sight, I think, for Brewers fans. Jackson Chourio, the prospect kid, he's really breaking out on the scene right now. He's been really impressive. So the Brewers haven't left yet. So congrats to them, and we'll see specifically in terms. Like I said, it's only the first couple weeks of the season, so it's like how much stock can you kind of put into this. But they're playing kind of like they've been in the past with obviously a healthy Burns and Williams. They haven't really skipped a beat there, so that's a little shocking. The Marlins, a little bit. I'm kind of obviously a little surprised about that. I mean, obviously they've only had 2 wins on the season. Yes, their pitching's banged up, kind of like Houston's, but man, that's a tough situation right now with the Marlins. I mean, they're not getting much offensively. And of course, you guys are just playing them right now this week. I mean, I don't know how much you feel about them, but yeah, they're having a hard time scoring runs. And 2-11, they're 6.5 out. That's going to be. It could be a tough year for them. It really could. I mean, I think the Mets, specifically, they're 4-7. They just had. They almost came back against the Braves twice. They came back once already, but that's coming early series to the Mets. Kind of show me if there's something here and there, and that kind of tells me right now the Mets. Yeah, they're 4-7, but they could be kind of floating in around that 3rd, 4th spot. So I look at the Nationals. They got some pieces there. CJ Abrams, is obviously breaking onto the scene. So there's a couple things that I'm looking at. Some things that don't surprise me. The Colorado Rockies, around like we talked last week, still stink. I mean, that team is an absolute disaster. And another thing too about the A's is, like you mentioned last week, they're getting a new ballpark despite the fact of their struggles, because I know the Red Sox faced them in Oakland.
oh yeah,
So the A's specifically, they're 4-8. But if you told me, Ryan, that the A's would be up in the Astros right now, the first couple weeks of the season, how do you feel? I think that I'd call you absolutely bonkers and nuts. Like I said, that's why we talk about the first couple of weeks in terms of how things go, and that's where it stands right now. So that's pretty much that. And my also thing too is I'm not saying an Anthony Volpe hater for me per se, but I've always called him like him and the Casas comparisons. I always was a big believer in Casas being better. And listen, Volpe's a good player, but I just didn't know specifically how much of his next step he takes. And I'll admit he he's going to be fun to watch. He has a lot of really good tools. I was kind of criticizing him a little bit in terms of uppercut swing. He's done a lot of good things with his swing, and he's definitely eating my words alive for sure in terms of how I feel. Now, he's like I said, he's obviously young, right? I knew for a fact that it's going to be that way, but there are so many Yankee fans that told me how incredibly special this guy's going to be. I'm just it's like with the Orioles holidays, like break it down, just tone it down just a smidge. But
it drives me nuts when they try and compare him to Derek Jeter.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, I saw some of that too. Yeah. There's a little bit of the overhype with Volpe, but like I said, I'll give him props and props to do. He's playing great baseball. He's up there in average right now in terms of the MLB. He's cutting down his K rate, right? So his defense too. That's I think one of the biggest things I was worried about with him. That's kind of harping on this kid was his defense was just very subpar. But he's proven me wrong for at least to start for sure. So those are some of the surprises that I have to start.
Yeah, those are good ones. And obviously, for me as a Yankee fan, I hope he keeps it up. So we're almost out of time here. So I just want to quickly move to our final topic, which is that Ippei Mizuhara, obviously Shohei Ohtani's former interpreter, he's going to be facing federal charges, obviously, for his involvement in the gambling scandal. This news broke yesterday, and this comes from Paul Levine and TJ Quinn of ESPN. He will be facing federal charges, like I mentioned. The New York Times was the first to report on this. And he is in negotiations to plead guilty, and that the investigation is running towards a conclusion. So, like we mentioned a couple of episodes ago, 3 weeks ago, Mizuhara was let go, he was terminated by the Dodgers for his involvement in at least a $4.5 million gambling scandal that was transmitted from Ohtani's bank account to a California bookmaker. And I'm still reading this article from ESPN. Mizuhara said that he had amassed a lot of gambling debt, and Ohtani helped him by wiring the money in $500,000 last year. But then Mizuhara changed his story, and Ohtani said that he had no knowledge of these payments at all. So it's still a convoluting story, but I'm not surprised that this is what's happening. I knew this was going to happen. Obviously, a lot of people saw this coming from a mile away. So yeah, Mizuhara, he's in big trouble, and now he's being forced to plead guilty, basically. So yeah, his life is probably in shambles right now.
Yeah, it's obviously like we talked about a couple weeks ago about this story. There's more to it. And this is just obviously just another piece to this overall thing. I still think, Ryan, that there's still more to it. I think obviously in terms of the bank account, right, of his money specifically, Ohtani essentially not knowing about the information and stuff like that. I still think that he is still lying about that. I mean, the fact that it's like 4.5, was it billion or was it millions?
Million.
Millions, right. So it's $4.5 million, and essentially, when you go to the bank, you write down the checks in terms of things like that. And so, how does he not know specifically that his check is not going in? That's like I said, it just some of it just does not add up.
That was my biggest question.
Yeah. But for this interpreter, right? He's in shambles. I mean, he specifically, of course, during the Soul series, obviously, this is kind of where a lot of things kind of first transpired. And I think that for him specifically, him and Ohtani, I think, are not on good team's terms anymore. I mean, I think honestly, so I know with the Ohtani press conference, the other guy specifically, I mean, I think that he did his best. I think that this guy specifically though, Ippei was really close with Shohei, and I think that you kind of see Ohtani's stats so far, and it's been fine, but it's not like the Ohtani that we're all accustomed to seeing. Now, like I said, I don't know specifically if there's any type of impact with that in terms of what's going on there. There obviously could be some of that stuff. But yeah, obviously this is kind of more news in terms of more news that will probably come down the road. And now it's really just a matter of in terms of the fall game, right? Because we know specifically the fact of, Ippei is going to get most of the blame. I think that's pretty much at this point in time. I mean, if you're facing federal charges, you are going to pretty much be in the gutter. I mean, essentially, in other words, in terms of you are not getting out of this situation, no matter how you try to make it out. So that's pretty much what I have, at least for right now. And we'll see in terms of where things go from here on out.
Yep, like I said, this is probably going to linger on throughout the course of the season and for who knows how long. But yeah, Mizuharu's life basically is over at this point with these charges. So yeah, so we're out of time here. Thank you everybody for watching this episode. On behalf of Ben Kruse, I'm Ryan Touhey. Take care and see you next time.